Hello everyone and welcome back to One Nerd to Rule Them All. In today's video we're going in with another battle breakdown. We're going to be covering the Battle of the Hornburg. I'll begin with what is Tolkien's book adaptation of it, and then I'll be going into Peter Jackson's movie adaptation of it and discussing the differences between the two. So without further ado, let's get into the video. The Battle of the Hornburg took place in the mountain fortress of the Hornburg in the valley of Helm's Deep in the lands of Rohan. This took place over the night of the 3rd and the 4th of March of 3019 of the Third Age. The battle saw the attacking Isengard forces, under the order of Saruman, defeated by the powerful forces of the Rohirrim, led by King Theoden and Ericbrand, leader of the group of the Rohirrim. The army of Rohan consisted of 1,000 cavalry forces from Edoras, the capital of Rohan, led by King Theoden. This force also included Aragorn, Legolas and Gimli, as well as Theoden's nephew, Eomer. This army joined with Rohan's garrison of an additional 1,000 men at the Hornburg. The army was also reinforced by additional 1,000 Rohirrim troops, rallied by Gandalf and led by Ericbrand. Separate from the armies, there was an additional ally in the form of the Huns, who entered the valley independently, seeking vengeance on Saruman's orcs after their siege with the orcs in Isengard. The army of the corrupted wizard Saruman, amassed both in service but also in competition with his lord Sauron, consisted of his orcs. It also included his specifically bred Uruk-hai and half-orcs. It was also supported by Dunlendings, also known as the Wild Men of Dunland, men who had long since been enemies of Rohan. It is mentioned that the army consisted of around 10,000 orcs, with a much smaller number of Dunlendings. On March 3rd, seeking to take the fight away from his people, Theoden brought round 1,000 horsemen to the fords of Isen, along with many others in Edoras. On their way, they found Carl, who reported a defeat in the fords. King Theoden then redirected his troops to Helm's Deep, which was commanded by Gamling in his lord Ericbrand's absence. The forces from Isengard arrived during the night and quickly scaled over the first defence, Helm's Dyke. They then attempted to break down the fortress gates using a battering ram. But Aragorn, Eomer, and some other Rohirrim attacked through a postern gate on the side of the Hornburg, scattering the forces threatening the doors. Following this, the orcs and the Dunlendings proceeded to raise hundreds of ladders, changing their tactics, and began scaling the walls. Aragorn and Eomer had to repeatedly move the defenders, who were getting weary, to repel the orcs coming up the ladders and crossing the wall. However, some orcs had crept through a culvert which led a stream out of Helm's Deep. While the defenders were busy with the assault on the wall, they suddenly attacked, having made it past the wall. The defenders quickly reacted and drove back the orcs, and the culvert was blocked up once again under the supervision of Gimli. However, this was short-lived, as the enemies re-entered the culvert caused by an explosion using a device of Saruman's. This made a wide hole in the wall, and the Isengarders could not be stopped. The defenders retreated to the glittering caves and to the Hornburg. Soon Saruman's forces used their blasting fire to gain entrance to the keep. At this moment, however, the horn of Helm's Deep was sounded, and after a moment of sortie, led by Theoden and Aragorn, rode forth, followed by men on foot from the keep and the defenders of the caves, who made a breakout attempt and were driving the enemies out of the deep. Theoden and Aragorn cut through the orcs and the Dunlendings and arrived at Helm's Dyke. It was then that both armies noticed the many trees, or the Huns, that had moved to block a possible escape route for the orcs. Then Gandalf, Ericbrand, and 1,000 men on foot from the Westfold arrived and charged at the enemy. The Dunlendings were so terrified of Gandalf that they could no longer fight. The orcs lost control and ran into the trees, where the Huns destroyed them. Thus, Rohan won the battle. After the battle, those Dunlendings who surrendered were given amnesty by King Theoden and allowed to return to their home. The Rohirrim requested that all hostilities cease and that the Dunlendings retreat behind the Isen River once again. The slain Dunlendings were buried in a mound that was separate from the orc carcasses. The next night, those carcasses disappeared, and the death down was left by the departing Huns. Now moving on to the movie adaptation of the battle, as it is portrayed by Peter Jackson in Lord of the Rings: The Two Towers. The Battle of the Hornburg is turned into the climax of the second movie, and thus the build-up is altered significantly. Furthermore, This build-up is given far more prominence in the narrative in order to better set up the conflict as the film's third act climax. Considering the fact that Tolkien suggested cutting the battle completely in his commentary on Zimmerman's film script, it's probably given more prominence than he likely intended. The film-based battle is referred to as the Battle of Helm's Deep, a title which was never used by Tolkien, but is often used by fans due to its occupying the chapter entitled Helm's Deep. The greatest differences largely stem from the events preceding the battle. In the book, the army of the Rohirrim seek to confront Saruman's army at the fords of Isen when they decide to redirect to the deep, where the refugees of the Westfold have fled, and anticipate the forces of Isengard. In the film, the entirety of Rohan's people, the men, women, and children, are relocated to the deep for protection against Saruman's orcs, who also find and hunt them. In the book, only the women and children of the Westfold are there. The battle is given a sadistic and somewhat excessive way as women and children hide in the glittering caves, and the very existence of the Rohirrim is decided by the outcome. As the battle in the film wears on, the Rohirrim even go to the extent of pressing young boys into the army, the horrific consequences of which are emphasized constantly, as poorly armed boys are visible in the background in various roles. Another major difference is that Elrond, at the prompting of Galadriel, sent a contingent of elven archers to reinforce the defenders of the keep. It's unclear how Elrond, who was in Rivendell, was able to send an army of Lorien elves, as well as have them arrive at the Hornburg before the battle started. In the book, it's never made explicitly clear by what method the Uruk-hai caused the explosion that blasts a hole in the deeping wall, with Aragorn merely hinting at some delivery of Orthanc. The movie explicitly shows that Saruman, fitting with his theme of misusing his knowledge to empower his armies with a sort of pronto-industrial revolution, makes his own gunpowder and uses it to make blasting charges that the Uruk-hai then ignite. In the movie, the 10,000 troops of Saruman lay siege to the fortress, which is defended by around 300 men, many of whom were in fact depicted as children or elders to further add anxiety and villainy to the events. When Legolas says there are 300 Rohirrim, he may have meant at that time, as more were fleeing to the fortress, as visually there are more than 300 Rohirrim appearing on screen in the battle. These forces suffer heavy losses, but hold out till dawn when Gandalf arrives with thousands of riders, who finally turn the tide of the battle and send Saruman's forces into retreat. In the movie, these riders are led by Eomer, whereas they are led by Ericbrand in the book. This is the turning point in the movie that led to the victory of the people of Rohan. This is the battle breakdown of the Battle of Hornburg. I hope you enjoyed it, so please feel free to comment down below any battles you want me to focus on in future videos, or any characters you want me to cover as well. Anyway, that's it from me. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will see you next time. Bye for now.